A pleasure to me all at last, and welcome back to Super Foam Flying. Yeah, lots of Nerf stuff out there to handle nowadays, but that's kind of what you gotta do if you basically want to continue creating content for such a great series like Nerf Secrets Revealed. I tell you, I'm doing all that I possibly can to keep it alive, and especially with the upcoming sequel to Secrets Revealed Bolts of Intrigue. Well, Nerf Secrets Revealed, that is. I really am ambitious, and I'm also confident that this series will continue being an incredible piece of inspiration in my life. Knowing that it had astounding success in the beginning, and how it somehow continues to do better nowadays. It really truly is my biggest work of art yet. But it's time to focus a little on the smaller aspects. Okay. Another one went on the floor, but here we go with the Nerf Elite color variation of the Reflex, which is simply put a combination of dark blue, a little bit of white, a little bit of black, a little bit of light gray, and some orange. A nice color variation and a bit of a newer release of the Reflex itself. But, as I've mentioned before though, there's times where I would actually give new names to these new variations of these blasters. Colors or whatnot, it's the line that ultimately gives it away, that because it's a whole different product line in and of itself, they should not be copying the names off of their other lines. So, the thing is that the N-Strike series had multiple color variations of the Reflex, and the Reflex can just stick to those blasters. This is an Elite one. So what name have I given this one in particular? Well, I call it the Auger. Yep, the Auger. A-U-G-E-R in a nutshell. And well, it's exactly what you think it is. A top slide blaster with this large orange tube that basically is the plunger tubing that comes out, so when you pull the trigger, it collapses, allowing air pressure to build inside. Just like that. Rinse and repeat pretty much until you get bored. This was in fact a blaster that I loved so much, apart from what the regular Reflex was like back then, that I've had several known instances where I was practically using this to calm myself down during periods of stress or to help me sleep. I'm not kidding. There were a few times, of course, where I used to live with my parents. And I've had this thing constantly cocked, fired. Sometimes it would wake them up and make them mad. So, I mean, that's just how much I loved this thing back in the day. But how does it do today? Well, first of all, when discussing everything else about it, it does have some pretty poor ergonomics, obviously. A really tiny hand grip, with nothing more than a sling mount on this part, which can be used for hanging it up on a wall, like me, or you could probably do otherwise. There's also a tack rail on top that you can use for probably anything. And that could eliminate the purpose of using the top slide by top sliding, pretty much. That's probably why it's called a top slide. But you could always go from the back end like that. Not necessarily practical, but it still does work as a technique for the most part. So that's just pretty much my take on the Elite Auger. There, of course, haven't really been any newer versions of this released since then, so it's only worth knowing that it probably didn't do very well in later years, as the model itself would progress over to the Elite line and pretty much not sell as many units as time went on. So, unfortunately, even today, we probably can't seem to find anything else like that. Although, there actually was a new blaster known as the Side Strike, which was released in 2014 for the Zombie Strike line. And then there was another color variation made for the Elite line for a double pack of Side Strike blasters. Of course, I had given those new names too, because the lineups that they come from, that's basically different product lines. And therefore, the names would have to be different amongst all things. And then, of course, there was the Talon Strike for the AccuStrike line. And that, of course, came out in 2018. So that's probably as recent as you could probably get with top slide blasters, which, of course, were not just with the Reflex and Auger, but also with the Scout IX3, which at first was put together for both an N-Strike line and the 3-in-1 Unity power system back in 2010. And then, of course, with other top slide blasters, they've pretty much come and gone as well. So here we have a Dart Tag Eliminator, for example, right where my finger is pointing at. That's another good example out there. And it does also utilize the same sort of, well, plunger tube exposed like this. And the one advantage that this has is that, well, actually a couple, it has slightly better ergonomics, but still not optimal enough for usage from large hands like myself. Maybe if you held it like this, it would work a lot better. Also, dart storage. So this one's definitely better, but the Eliminator itself, unfortunately, is very obscured for the most part. I don't really know why, but again, it's certainly more advantageous compared to the Reflex or Auger because of how it does better, both in ergonomics. Not quite as good as most blasters should be, but it still does way better than the Auger in general, and dart storage. The Auger didn't have that, but it, of course, has a tactical rail on the top of the slide itself. I feel like there's not much else I could go on with all this good stuff, so overall, my verdict on the Auger is it's just 1 thumbs up, not 2, like I would normally give it. And in case you're wondering about KFN original scoring, which would run from 0.0 to 10.1, well, I'd give it a 6.3 out of 10.1, pretty much. That's just my overall scoring, KFN original scoring, and all that good stuff. Official scoring, of course. Otherwise, not much else left to say about it. So if you want to see more, go down to my channel to make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.